Good, going to say good day. Good day, and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow-Driven CEO podcast. It is Monday in California, and it's now 2:40 p.m. And it is 7:40 a.m. here in Melbourne, Australia on Tuesday. And I want to welcome James Ehrlich to the pod, where we're both currently in the present, not in the past or the future. So welcome, James.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm pretty thrilled to be talking to you today, James. It's quite quite an interesting discussion that we're about to have. And I won't talk too much. I've probably already had a bit of a chat to you just now through the pod, but what a fabulous I guess company you're running in terms of the founder of ReGen Villages, which is right behind you in your big poster there. I love that. And it's Stanford University spin-off company, which was formed in the EU to realize the future of living in regenerative and resilient communities. And you're currently in residence at Stanford University as well. And we were just talking about what you're doing. And I thought I'd hand it over to you to let you share with everybody what you've been up to, the journey, how ReGen Villages came about, and yeah, I'd love to hear about it.
Sure. So pleasure to be here. I am at Stanford University. I am currently the director of compassionate sustainability in the School of Medicine in the Center for Compassion, Altruism, Research, and Education under Dr. James Doty. And I've been at Stanford since 2012. I started my journey at Stanford in the School of Mechanical Engineering on this topic of housing and self-reliant kind of single house context developments, but then had this background in case study research of organic, biodynamic, small plot family farms and eco villages. So I traveled around the world doing lots of research on these places. And so when I came to Stanford, I was kind of excited and informed and moving forward with this idea of the network effect
Mm,
of multiple houses that are energy positive
mm.
based on in communities that were developed around what's called permaculture, which is a field of study actually born in many ways out of Australia.
Yeah.
Um, and continues to this day with like Jeff Lawton, for instance, and but Bill Mollison is the sort of pioneers of the word permaculture, which is permanent culture, related to the shaping or reshaping of land
Mm.
that can recharge and replenish and create these flourishing environments. So, long story short, I also come from a technology background. So, my undergrad degree was in computer science and in video game design. And I moved out from New York City to Northern California and was designing cartridge games for Atari, Nintendo, Sega. Yeah, and also doing software for special effects for motion pictures. We were working a lot with George Lucas, Star Wars fame, but I was living north of the Golden Gate Bridge, which was in just 30 minutes north, actually, of the Golden Gate Bridge is a place called Marin County, and in this sort of western part of Marin County, people were riding horses into town for their morning latte. And so it was quite a kind of a culture shock for
Yeah.
me to all of a sudden be, boom, immersed in nature. But again, really what happened was that I started to learn about whole system design thinking
Mm.
around nature. And that's what has been my life's work and my journey that I'm so happy to have brought with me into Stanford and now continue my affiliation at Stanford. But as you mentioned before, we've got this lovely spin-off company called ReGen Villages and a software platform that we've been developing called the Village OS, which is really interesting. It's like SimCity meets town planning for self-reliant neighborhoods. So we make it easy for landowners like aging farmers or government officials or other people who have no skills whatsoever to just say, hey, what's possible on this particular piece of land?
Mm.
And moreover, it's about how do we accelerate the changing of the rules to make things happen faster, and that we can see these kinds of communities get built faster. That's really the main goal of the software.
Wow, sounds so impressive. In terms of, obviously from a university perspective, are you like lecturing at the university? Like how does it work? And forgive me for asking those questions, but like how does it work in terms of you've got the spin-off company ReGen Villages, which is based out of Stanford. But like from a day-to-day perspective, yeah, how does it work with companies and do you
Yeah, it's challenging. You're absolutely right, and it's a great point, and it's completely bifurcated. So I did have, a high level, position on campus that was very well paid. I'll just say that, and I had to really give that up in order to kick off and move my affiliation to a lesser grade that I could be able to run a impact for profit startup company. But my life is really story is being a serial entrepreneur. So
yeah,
I've been through all of these different kinds of ups and downs and had some exits and had some failures, that lovely mix of what makes an entrepreneur, rough hews us, right? It shapes us.
yeah.
So I never want to give up my affiliation to Stanford because it's where ReGen Villages was really born, and I had the freedom to imagine, based on the research that we worked on, and we're actually continuing the research at Stanford, again separate from the impact for profit company. But basically, yeah, that's how I was able to do both things.
Yeah,
But I
wow.
do lecture and I do run some course programs. But again, that's all separate from the impact for profit.
Yeah, but it's such a important, conversation to be having, especially with the state of the world we're in. And, I don't know about you, but COVID, you kind of wonder whether Mother Nature just had had enough and was almost like asking us to stop and slow down. And you saw the regeneration even then with different areas where, like people who were traveling or and everything stopped for a while and you saw what happened and you saw what changed in terms of future and the importance of that. How do you have those conversations? Where does it start with the companies that you're working with? Do they come to you for, you just said when they say to you that piece of land and what's possible. How do you connect with businesses and companies that are looking for the regeneration of their, I don't know if I'm using the right language, but of the land or of the, yeah,
Sure. I mean, we're mostly approached by landowners who are typically asset rich but cash poor. Like
yeah,
in other words, they own the farmland,
yeah,
they own that land that's valuable next to the urban edge, but it's handcuffed,
yeah,
zoned agricultural or ranch or green belt, right? And then there's residential real estate developers who come to us, and then there's local regional governments who come to us, and then planning professionals and others. And how they came to us really, and how they continue to come to us, is that we've been blessed. We presented our thesis, if you will, back in 2016 at the Venice Biennale for architecture in Italy, and we had this little diorama, and all of a sudden I thought my phone had broken because we just started getting all this press coverage. And so we were in BBC, Guardian, South China Morning Post, New York Times, I mean, Reuters, you name it, and feature stories about this kind of concept of could you live in a neighborhood that is capable of self-sustaining
mm,
its population and for habitation. And so from that, we've just garnered just global attention. And of course, I speak at lots of conferences, I keynote, I'm on panels, I moderate, and that's kind of never-ending, wonderful cycle for me as well. And so, yeah, we've got landowners that we're doing work with currently in different parts of the world, different climate zones from South Africa, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Norway, Saudi Arabia. I mean, lots of different places that we've been building and modeling the software off of. So yeah, it's a flow that's been ongoing for us, and And we've had challenges too. I'm not going to say there aren't challenges.
Yeah,
Challenges, especially related to the fact that we have a software stack that covers and looks at all the different silos, right? Energy, water, waste, housing, food production, smart mobility, and for a lot of investors, that's too many silos. Like they want one particular
okay.
wheelhouse
Yeah,
that they focus on, right? But we're entering a new era where machine learning and AI
yeah,
and edge AI and all these things for sensing can can in fact handle the workload
yeah.
of multi-threaded whole system thinking. So those are some of the challenges we've had previously, and my hope is entering now into this moment of and this new era really that we'll start to be able to raise the next generation of capital that we're currently raising investment for.
Yeah, because it does feel like I always call it the new world. We're kind of transitioning out of this old world into the new world. And, what comes with that is, like you say, challenges, but also what comes with that for me is these endless possibilities. What do you see the future looking like in the next, 2 to 5 years in terms of, and also what do you see as the biggest, not challenges, but more so inhibitors, if you like, in terms of, from a regenerating point of view, like, and I'm probably asking that not just from a land perspective, but you work with humans, you're in that compassionate space and place. Like, what do you see as the biggest, moving, transitioning into this, like, wholly, like, fully into this new world? Because I see that there's this, we're still in this, getting pulled back into the old world, and then, but then there's a lot of people that you're probably working with, and like me, that are moving right on into this new world. But we're in this really interesting time where it's like we just need to move into it.
Yeah, so there's really sort of two perspectives, I feel like. And it feels kind of binary in the sense that there's a whole bunch of people who feel like it's dystopic and where we're heading with AI, machine learning and robotics is really just this mass layoff of employment and and despair. And just again this disproportionate imbalance for the wealthiest of the wealthy to just continue to increase their margins because of the robots, et cetera. Then there are a few folks like me, I think, a few of us, who are chronic optimists that we believe in the spirit of humanity and the creativity and the spirituality and the compassion and empathy, which is one of the biggest parts that AI has a gap in, right? That
Great.
these are the places where we can facilitate. Now, what does that mean? The next 2 to 5 years, I can see very easily this this renaissance of robotic interventions, assistance, doing a myriad of really cool things. Like, for instance, helping in farming and in bringing the cultivation of our nutrition in a less labor intensive way. Now, the dystopic side of that is what happens to all that labor.
Mm.
The hope is that with industrialized construction, which is data driven, by the way, that we can start to realize these new kinds of neighborhoods and communities where people have social affordable access and to dignified housing, and where these other systems and services are really helping people thrive and flourish.
Yeah.
And then with a little bit of universal basic income, and even Elon Musk has spoken about this before, a little layer of UBI, that all of a sudden we can start to evolve and away from this metric of work and jobs towards self-worth.
Yeah, I
So you
love
wake
that.
up in the morning, with, hey, I'm excited. This is what I want to do today. I have passion for this, fill in the blank thing, versus, I've got to get up and move paper from one end of the office to the other, or I've got to go and do this labor, whatever it is. So anyway, I am an optimist, and I believe that within the next 2 to 5 years, the computing power, the cost of these robotic interventions and assistance will come down dramatically. And the hope is that there will be a shift in the way governments and industry think in relationship to consumption and humanity.
Mm.
That's the hope.
Yeah, I'm a chronic optimist as well. Like, and people always quite often say to me, "Why are you like? How do you stay so positive?" But I'm like you, like, it is there is these endless possibilities. I guess for me, what we need out of this though is, and I feel like this regenerative way of living, right, is a model for conscious leadership, and so we need the leaders of the future to be those conscious leaders, those soulful conscious leaders, which is what I like to talk about as well, which is the reshape and shaping of the current and the existing leaders. Are you finding that especially in ReGen Villages and the town planners and everybody you're working with, are you noticing these people have more of that type of leadership? Like, or do you still think there's a way to go with, that style of leadership as well? Like, are you noticing these type of companies that you're working with that they are the future? I mean, they're obviously wanting to get your special advice, etc. But yeah.
Well, here's the thing, and I use the reference again about Elon and Tesla for the main purpose of being the fact that the electric drivetrain, how an electric vehicle works, right? The drivetrain itself is the most efficient drivetrain.
Yeah.
Okay, it always has been, and but it had been, let's say, vilified as being scary or not capable of holding a charge or whatever it is. And it really took Elon came along and made it sexy. He made this whole idea, not only that, but he made it viable with the high-speed charging and the network for charging and these kinds of things. So all of a sudden, it became a a force of nature in industry that the big automakers could no longer ignore. First,
Mm.
they laughed and they joked about him, and then when they started to see that he was eating the lunch of especially the luxury car companies, all of a sudden there was kind of I would say, a biblical moment, if you will. They were getting some religion on this topic that they needed to change because the consumer demand,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So we feel the same thing. What we've done is we've set kind of a new moniker for the new how the new middle class wants to live and
Yeah.
the aspirational class wants to live in the global south, which is that your new amenity is your food, water, energy, waste to resource management. It's your resiliency. It's the capability of your neighborhood to have your back
Yeah.
in case of fill in the blank anomaly, right? And so that has created this demand, which now the residential real estate developers have really moved into. And perhaps you've seen everywhere around the world now the word regen in front of everything.
Mm.
Okay. We're the OG of regen. I'll just throw that out there.
So
Okay.
do you feel like it's being overused? Like, do you feel like it's being overused? Like, just on that, like being the OG, do you feel like it's being overused at the moment and that it's not explained well enough in terms of what it's all about versus what you're doing? Like.
I think a lot of people don't know what it means. That's absolutely true. But I think people also don't know what the word sustainability means. And I think sustainability was an opportunity space about 50, 60 years ago. The hippies, God love us, right? 50, 60 years ago, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, recycling, and all these things. To be sustainable meant within your own footprint, what could you do to be conscious of these things, right? Now we've lost that opportunity. We can't really look at things as being sustainable anymore because now we're headed towards a place where we have to focus on what is going to be perpetuating better outcomes. And that's what the word regenerative actually means.
Mm. Yeah, and I love the perpetuating because it kind of, for me, it's that bouncing forward. It's a continuous, it's not just resilience in terms of bouncing back, it's that ability to be anti-fragile. Because what you're talking about here is whole system thinking from a regen village. you're almost creating that anti-fragile system around it so that, when it faces adversity as a community or as a village, it's not just about bouncing back. Yes, resilience plays a key role, but it's like, okay, what did we learn from that? And then how do we continue to bounce forward? And that's what we're talking about here, right? And for me, that's the game changer as we move into this new world that we're moving into. The other part of this for me feels like what you're doing is you're almost creating this collective. It's what I call a collective flow state in terms of where everybody is shining their brightest. The land, the community, the people, they're collectively shining their brightest to perform and feel at their best. And you've almost eradicating the old term of work. And it's interesting you brought that up because I was talking to someone about this very thing the other day and saying, imagine if like the word work just doesn't exist because it just feels like a work, like, and what you're doing isn't just work. It's actually changing and shaping what the future looks like. It's purpose driven, it's soul driven, it's everything you're talking about.
It's absolutely true. I mean, look, my research, my case study research for 16, 17 years was, I like to say, was driven by my stomach because I was traveling around eating these delicious meals at these farm to table communities, and I was feeling happy. I was feeling calm. I was feeling connected, even if we didn't speak the same language at those long farm to table meals. I felt that the recipes were telling these stories of ancestry, the aromas, the flavors, and these visceral experiences with the natural world, right, are grounding. We've never been more disassociated from nature than we are right now. And that's a problem because we are beings, we are part of nature, and we try to pretend that we're not. But the truth is that you probably know this as well. Whenever you're taking a stroll in the forest, or you go to the ocean, or you're sitting at some, beautiful meal that was cooked with friends from some produce that was sourced like right by the kitchen or whatever it is, that and there's no devices, everybody's just with each other, very present. There is a deep-seated resonance that happens. I don't want to get too California on you, but that's sort of like a DNA
Get it? Don't
frequency.
worry.
Okay. Seriously. And it happens. Okay. Now it's, what's great about this whole thing about frequencies and all this conversation is now it's interestingly enough about the future of technology, looking at quantum mechanics and quantum computing. It's all about all of these things that nobody can explain. And yet it's the very basis of our existence
Mm.
and the actual fabric of of our cosmos that we live in. So yeah, I mean, I think really what it comes down to is finding place inside these communities. These are not communes. These are not, like any kind of other way of looking at it, except to say that these are places where people just feel safe and safer, where their natural resources, they have access and agency to those things.
But it's only when you feel safe and safer that you have that ability to be able to trust and connect again. And like you say, where it is like I call it like we're living in like this almost most of the time we're operating from a survival mode. We're completely disconnected, and you're talking about it from a nature perspective. I talk about it from, when I'm working with leaders, that quite often we're so all the external factors around us, they disconnect us. And so how do we go back within? How do we reconnect with ourselves? What you're talking about here is even broader in terms of holistically. How do we reconnect back with nature? But how do we also reconnect back as humanity? And that's what these regen villages are doing. And so what's your biggest hope for regen villages? I asked you around the 2 to 5 year mark, but this is more, what's your biggest hope for your spin-off company, Regen Villages?
Well, I'm not going to bury the lead. We are we've raised a couple of million euro from family offices since 2016, and these sort of small convertible notes here and there along the way. and which has been amazing. And now we're currently trying to raise a pre-series A round, which will help us take the Village OS software, which is really cool stuff, by the way, into the next level and make this something which is this autonomous process so that people on the internet can just easily dial up a piece of land, an address, geospatial data, whatever, and start to model their perfect community using the software. So part of what we're trying to do right now is continue to fundraise while we're still working with landowners and other clients and continue to lead these wonderful workshops and other kinds of programs that we do, from Stanford, from the other hat that I wear.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where my biggest enthusiasm really is in this idea that we will have an epiphany, and that the right family office, the right high net worth individuals will come to us and say, this needs to happen right now.
Yeah.
And then we're off to the races, literally.
Yeah. That epiphany, I think it's going to be an epiphany from a very higher order leader, like someone who is just going to go, right, we need to sort this shit out like once and for all. Like we're going to either implode or we're going to, like you say, flourish. And that's the sort of leader that we're needing right now to really make that call. I feel like that's what is going to be the epiphany for you, and then ReGen Village is going to be there. I do have a question. It's based on my creative advertising communication background. Your circle on your poster at the back there. What's in the four little like the quadrants? What are the?
Food, water, energy, waste.
Oh, I love that.
Well, housing, I should say. I think the waste isn't there. It's food, energy, water, housing.
Yeah. And then for
Those
me,
are the four.
people sit in the middle, right? The community sits right in the very center of it.
That's the kind of the target, right, if you
Yeah,
will, because it's
yeah,
kind of a pie in four slices. There's many, many slices, of course, to that pie, but you're right. At the center is always people and animals
yeah.
and creatures.
I've
So
got a
yeah,
little
there's
creature
no.
sitting right next to me.
Yep.
He's sound asleep. He's a 16-month-old puppy. Um,
Oh,
I've got one last question for you, James, and I've actually just lost it, but it will come back to me in a second. Oh, no, it's come back to me. Forgive me. I'm on herbal tea early in the morning. Um, In terms of just us as like myself, what is one thing we could be doing today, starting today, from a region perspective in our own communities, in our own environments? Like I'm here in Elwood, Melbourne, Australia. Like what could I be doing? What could each of us as an individual be doing to because you talked around the disassociation to almost start to reassociate. What is one thing we could do?
well, many communities, even in urban areas, have farmers markets
Yeah, we
and
do. Around the corner.
community supported agriculture. And what's great is you go and you spend a little time talking to some of the farmers who've come in with their produce and their fruit and berries and other kinds of goodies. And what's even better is to go to volunteer at one of their farms and spend some time doing a little bit of help and support. Getting some soil microbes under your fingernails turns out to be really good for your
I'm a green
health.
thumb, so I love being in the garden.
Right, exactly. And there's science behind that. So it's reducing amygdala response, which is a trigger for cortisol release. So those are it's actually not labor, it's actually health. It's like people go to the gym, that's great, but if you go to a farm, it's even better. Because you're really working out, but you're also in nature, supporting nature. The soil health and this relationship with the soil is really key and critical. And then it starts to give you, and if you have kids, to bring your kids, that all of a sudden there's this awakening. It really is an awakening inside of us that happens. So that's one thing. And then you start to see how the farm is operating, especially a lot of these organic farms have a variety of things going on. The biodiverse ones will have chicken or maybe a cow or two. They'll have some other kinds of farm animals, and each one of them are playing a role. And there's a circularity, discussion about that too. So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to contribute. and then you can impart that into your daily life and see how what little things you can do even on your balcony in an apartment in an urban environment. Maybe I can grow some tomatoes. Maybe I can have some parsley or some rosemary or some other herbs and things. Like there's a sense of agency in that all of a sudden, when you taste a tomato that you grew, it has a different smell than what you get in the supermarket.
Yeah.
It's giving off different kind of aromas and profiles. So anyway, I would just say that taking a step into nature is really huge. And I like to say this quote. This is my quote, by the way. People can steal regen all day long. I know where it came from, but this is my quote for
Real
sure.
AG.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
If you take a half a step towards Mother Earth, she'll literally throw her arms around you.
I love that.
So it came from me.
Did it?
Yeah, it's mine. I mean, I
You need to have that you need to have that somewhere in your branding. I've decided. Have you got
could
it
be.
have you got it on your website?
No, I don't know. I don't think so.
No, that you need that quote. You need that.
Because landowners, developers, governments, it can be, we don't want to, push them to polarize that
It
this is
could just be
some,
like, oh, we can talk about this separately, but I feel like
I know,
that's the people piece. That's what you're bringing. You're bringing the two together. You're bringing nature and people
right.
and community. And last but not least, you're also just again solidifying that this is not work. This is more than just a job, right? This is not like even for giving us a tip to go and experience a farm or go to the farmer's market if that's like what's nearby. This is and getting back into nature. Like I talk a lot about active recovery in business as well. And this for me is exactly what you're talking about. How do you reconnect? How do you go back within? How do you connect back into nature? Um,
And that's the hope, but again, about AI and machine learning and robotics and all these things that it's always been the dream that technology would free humanity
yeah.
to be capable of
Well,
thinking bigger thoughts and solving bigger problems and design challenges, etc. It hasn't always worked out that way. Mostly now, technology means we have more email and more work, and we're sitting at the computer more, those kinds of things. But yeah, I do hope that that is where things are going.
I don't think it's yeah, I think it's more that it's going to go that way because we've got people like you in the world that are making the difference and making that impact, and people like myself that believe that there is the endless possibilities. Nothing's impossible, everything's possible. I do love a good old Audrey Hepburn quote. I need to come up with my own quote. But James, how can we find out more about you and ReGen Villages?
Well, you can go to regenvillages.com. That's our website, and there's not much there except you can find a way to email me. We're still a bit cryptic on our Village OS software, but we will have that being birthed in terms of the website very shortly. The other way is, of course, my Stanford email, which is James E, for my last name, James E at stanford.edu. So happy to speak to people, whoever wants to reach out. Again, it's about storytelling
Yeah.
and informing people, and this is what we can do.
Mm. Yeah, we can do as a collective. Thank you, James. I've much
Thank you.
appreciated this conversation and the impact and positive impact and difference you're making in this world.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I
Have
really
a good
do.
afternoon. Thank you.
You too. All right. Cheers.